On our latest episode, we have the pleasure of speaking to Noel Dempsey. Noel has vast experience within coach education and also football coaching. So without further ado, hello Noel. How are you today, my friend?
I'm all right, buddy. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Obviously, we know each other well. So just can you let the listeners know your current roles and just a little bit about yourself?
So currently outside of football, I'm coming to the end of a kind of 3-year funded PhD where I've been researching kind of formal coach education provisions within grassroots football, and that's been with the English Football Association and Liverpool John Moores University, and that's been a journey. It's been good. A little bit more to do in terms of the write-ups, but it's been very productive. I'm also an FA coach developer, so I tutor on the level 1 and level 2, and have previously delivered on the UEFA B license. And I'm also, like you, mate, an FA mentor for Manchester as well. So we look after coaches in the grassroots game and to support and to guide them. And then I do a little bit of coaching as well in the meantime with Manchester City and their selects program. So I take the under 9s group along with another coach, Pat, and we have a great time in that as well. So yeah, fairly busy, fairly diverse set of roles.
I was going to say, it sounds like you have quite the hectic schedule, and I know in the past we've spoke about managing that schedule. Just how do you manage to fit everything in?
Yeah, no sleep, no sleep, late nights. No, listen, it's tough. It is tough, but I think people in our industry can relate to that. I think we were talking earlier around multiple roles and going to and from, and evening work, weekend work, and I'm very fortunate, like a lot of us are, that and I think she'd kill me if I didn't acknowledge her, to be fair, that my partner Naomi is very understanding of kind of what I do and the requirements of that. So having that support network to be able to go out 5 evenings a week and to get your bits done is first and foremost really important. And I think then you've got to repay that with sacrificing a little bit of your time to allow your partner to do the same. So sacrifice is key, and having that support network is massive. And yeah, sacrifice. I think we're at the age now, or certainly I'm at the age now, where I can sacrifice going out in order to stay in and do some work, whether it be supporting learners and projects, or happily go out and do in situ visits and support, or get out and coach on the grass and help some players. So I just think you got to compromise where you can, sacrifice where you need to get to where you want to go, really, mate. I think it's getting up early in the morning, doing bits you can. I'm a night owl, so I've always tended to stay up late, and I think like you, mate, we've got kids, and once the kids go to bed, and Mrs. does her thing, I come in the office and sit and work, mate. That's what it is. You sit and you put the hours in as and when you can. So yeah.
So obviously going from that pretty hectic schedule, we're talking now during what is, I'd say, week 8 of the lockdown situation due to COVID-19.
Yep.
How's that changed for you then, from living life in fast lane, several lanes, to, not being able to go out and support coaches? And
yeah, I mean, listen, we're in a time where football is very much secondary. Whether we like it or not, football is secondary to humanity at this present moment in time. I think we've got to recognize that we're in a stage and a time where consolidation, sitting tight, spending time with the family, or what family you can at the moment is most important. And to be fair, for me, very fortunate that we have a garden and the kids can play and can roam, and I think it's just taking stock of that. I think coaching wise, as you'll know, obviously the FA are trying their best to kind of support coaches where they can, with a lot of CPD, and obviously people have been stepping up like yourself, putting these podcasts together, which is fantastic, mate. And it's great that you're doing that, not just for your own development, but for the development of other coaches at this time. So I think for me, it's just being able to actually spend some time doing some writing, doing some PhD. My stuff at the moment is very much secondary to my partners as well. My partner works with kind of vulnerable adults. He works for a charity for blind and deaf people, and that's a different world. We're not privy to that world. We're very privileged. So just taking stock of that really, mate, and spending time with my kids. Like we have these hectic schedules. We don't often see them. Typical kind of weekly thing is you're passing ships sometimes as they come in from school. You give them a kiss, you say how your day was, and then you're out and you're coaching. Whereas now, you get to wake up, we do some homeschooling. There's a lot of crying. Normally it's mine. Normally it's me crying.
So who's that from, kids or you?
Yeah, no, it's always from me, mate. So it is difficult, but I think we've just got to take stock. I'm very fortunate to be in a very privileged position to have a house with a garden and kids and the missus. So yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, very, very hectic role, and even though it's busy, I can imagine it's a very rewarding place that you're in at the minute. I just wanted to go sort of through your career to date and your sort of experiences along the way. As those who are listening can tell you, obviously you work for Manchester FA, but that doesn't quite match. Where did you grow up, and when did the love affair with football start?
Yeah, so I like to think of myself as an adopted Mancunian, if I'm honest. I'm not sure how many people have that, but I've been up here nearly 8 years. Moved up to Manchester 8 years ago, but I'm originally from East London. Grew up in East London. Born and bred in Hackney and in Walthamstow. So football's always part of it. Football's part of it. I think my dad being a Chelsea fan. Which he kind of in his days was the 70s and the 80s, and Chelsea weren't the most prolific team back then, as they are now. And I grew up, I guess, in the early 90s with football where we still weren't that good. But my dad used to take me every week, and I guess it's very rare now in the Premier League for teams like Chelsea. And back in my day, we could stroll up to Stamford Bridge on the day and pay at the turnstile and get a seat. We can't do that now. So that's where it came from. My dad really passionate about his football, and we grew up as kids just always playing the game. The type of life that we led was, friends were family, and you spent time with your friends like they were your brothers and your sisters, and we played in the park, we climbed trees, we played football. So that's where it stemmed from, and it went all the way through school, and all the way through college playing and university and stuff like that. So I've always, you always love the game. You always love the game. Like I say, I think we said it a little bit earlier that we're struggling a little bit, but at the same time, we take stock of the current situation.
So brought up in and around football, obviously love affair started quite early. What age then did you get into coaching? As you mentioned, you played through your college days.
Yeah, I say I played. I wasn't very good. I kicked it and it went somewhere. It wasn't always the intended destination, but it went somewhere. No, I actually got into coaching fairly late, actually, because I think it was after I finished my master's degree at university, and I came home to London, and I was teaching at the time, so I was currently going through teacher training, and I just wanted to. I'd been a bit battered and bruised, so as well as playing football, I played other sports. I did a lot of running, road running, and my knees were starting to hurt. And it's baffling to say at 21, 22 that you're almost broken, but I was, and I just didn't want to put myself through it. But I love the game, so I said, I wanted to get involved in coaching. And my dad put me in contact with, a local club who had a very kind of prestigious reputation, shall we say, and asked if I could maybe go along and do some bits, and I did, and it kind of stemmed from there really. And I was extremely fortunate at the start of my coaching journey to have such amazing coaches. So the main coach who I kind of worked with and liaised with, and you know, even to this day, you know, we spoke last week, was an ex player, had coached for kind of 20 years in the game, had coached at kind of pro clubs, at youth level, so academies. And he just took me under his wing, and you know, his brother as well had massive ties with professional clubs in and around kind of London, and we just spent those kind of first 2.5 years just going around showcasing the players that we had at pro clubs, the kids, you know, getting signed, and I was privy to that really early. So although it was classed as this grassroots side, we were almost like a showcase team where we just have these kids, and I say kids, you know, ranging from, you know, 12 to 16, predominantly the ones that were being taken up by clubs. And I was so fortunate, you know, I was around A licensed coaches from a very, very kind of early start in my career, but not A as if they would shove it down your throat, and, you know, not B licensed coaches that they shove it down your throat. They were just so humble about the game, and they were humble about understanding who they were, and for me to understand who I was and what my strengths were as a coach to build upon. So I guess not that kind of uniformed approach to coaching. It's go and find what you're good at. I think I'm pretty good at this now, but don't copy me.
Yeah.
You know, can you shout as loud as me? Probably not. So don't shout. Find another way. So it was interesting. I say that's quite funny. I can shout, so but not compared to Danny. So yeah. So that's kind of where it kick-started really, and they supported me through my initial badges. So I actually did my level 1 when I was at uni, but I think it was more out of the case that there was an opportunity. The uni were supporting it, and you go, yeah, fine, I'll dive on it. But you know, I'm still kind of playing. Whereas when I returned to London, I'd done my level 2, which was kind of the old version of the level 2. And then within kind of like 4 or 5 months, I was on my B license, and kind of that was tough. But they supported me through it. You know, they said, look, come to training. How many players were you working with on course? Oh, X amount. Okay. What spaces did you have? Well, this much space. Right. Let's go. Take them. What were you working on? This, and this. Okay. Show me what you did. So it was almost like getting, I guess, the mentoring that kind of we do now. They were doing that far more informally, just to support my development, which, you know, I've always been very, very grateful of.
I was going to jump in with that. Just saying it's quite ironic, really, that as mentors yourselves, you were exposed to that sort of level of mentoring indirectly. Really, how valuable would you say that's been?
Invaluable. And, you know, like I said, I spoke to Danny, you know, last week, because we still talk regularly now. And, you know, I've been up here 8 years, and, you know, he's one of my biggest role models, you know, as a coach and as a person as well, because, you know, for what he's done in the game as an ex-pro, and what he's doing in terms of just continuously cycling out good players that get into pro clubs. It's amazing. And to look back and understand that when he's having a conversation with you, he's in the moment with you, and he's not distracted, and he's not doing it. And I try to take those qualities that when I'm you know, supporting coaches, whether it be on course or whether it be through mentoring, that I'm in the moment with them. And that's something that I really, really try and hone in on whenever I can, that I'm just there. And it's important to be present, you know, not to be, you know, distracted, because we've got so many distractions now with, you know, technology and social medias and, you know, phone calls and people messaging, that sometimes we can be a bit busy doing that. And yeah, I just think that really hit home for me, to be that type of person, not just coach or coach developer or mentor, but be that type of person that's in the moment. And I've carried that through.
Can you remember your first ever session?
Yeah, I can. It was a car crash. It was horrible. but in all seriousness, I'll admit that it was before I actually met Danny, and one of my dad's friends again took a local team, and I think I was like in my second year of uni, and I think I was back for the summer, and they were starting up pre-season, and they said, "Oh, would you stick a session on?" And I went, "Yeah, I'll do it. You know, big time, and I've got a level 1. I'll do it." And I use it now on course. I use the story every time on the level 1 course, and because I think I was still in the mode of playing, and they were under 12s, they were a grassroots team. from what I remember, a lovely bunch of kids, and I just shouted at them. I spent like 46 out of the 50 minutes just screaming at them. And I was like getting so frustrated because they couldn't do what I was asking them to do, but I could do it.
Yeah.
So surely if I can do it, you should be doing it. You know, you're meant to be football players. What's going on? And yeah, it cringed, and I got so frustrated. I remember walking off going, I'm not coaching. I'm never coaching. I'm going back to uni. I'm doing something else. You know, I'm going to become a sports psychologist. I'm not getting involved in the game because the players just couldn't do what I was asking them to do. And when I think back to the practice design, and it was around possession and it was around switching play, and I'm like, I couldn't do it now. So, you know, what I was asking them to work with multi-ball, you know, 2 or 3 balls going at one time. They were 12. And I'm like, oh God. So it stuck vividly in my mind, massively.
It's really intriguing that is that, you, as I say, you've put that session on from your sort of mind state and your ability, and then tried to put it onto the players and look what a learning experience that was. But I think there's a key message in there somewhere of understanding your players.
Yeah.
So a first session to put on a multi-ball practice, switching play, and what you're saying was bold. But how important would you say it is about understanding your audience, really?
Oh, listen, I mean, that was a session where, you know, I'd been on a level 1 course, which at the time was very different. I hadn't coached anyone before. And I just thought I was big time. And, you know, you reflect on it now and you have to say, look, before the game, you got to get to know these little people. I say little people, you know, there's 12-year-olds that are like 6'2" nowadays, but, you know, you've got to get to know these people. You've got to know what makes them tick. And, you know, you've got to know what they respond to. You know, some respond to, you know, direct instruction. Others don't. Others respond to, listen, I'm going to ask you a question, or I'm going to challenge you on X, Y, and Z. And I'm just going to watch and see what you do. And I'll ask you a little bit more after. Some need direction in practice. Some, they just need you well away from them. And you've got to take the time. So before all this detail comes out, before all these, you know, magical practice designs, you know, come free flowing out of you, you need to sit back and you need to kind of take stock of who these little people are. And who these kind of, you know, young kids are that are turning into kind of young boys and young girls who are then turning into young men and young women, and what they're about, because we often forget and we label them. Something that I've tried to get across, you know, recently, and the stuff that I've tried to learn is that these aren't players. These are just people. They're people that play. And the more you understand that every day these people develop in different ways and in different contexts, whether the context be in football, in school, in the home, or out with their friends, it's going to impact on your session. And you've got to be aware of that. You've got to take stock of maybe what's gone on that week, you know, whether it's been exam week for year 10s and year 11s, or whether it's been a half term. You know, something we learned pretty quick at City, that, you know, with our 9s, that the week after half term week, they always come back really sluggish. And I'm like, why? And they're like, oh, we've been playing football like every day, so I'm knackered. And you're like, right, okay. Okay, that's fine. Like that. And you do, and you just pick them up and you just kind of play, and but you've got to know about them, and that's really, really important.
Yeah, that's something I've learned, and I love that you've said there, that they're not players, the people that play. And do you know what? They're really, really interesting and complex people, and it's great to get to know them and the little quirks and the characters. I mean, I've been fortunate this year to work under 12s, and, you know, I've gone in with a mindset more of they are people, and the returns I've had in terms of the relationships, and, you know, it's been superb. Really enjoyed it this season. Luke, an array of academic qualifications, including a Bachelor of Science degree in Sports Science, Master's degree in Psychology, a PGCE, and currently studying a PhD. Would it be fair to say then that you enjoy the theory side of life?
Yes and no. I think the caveat is that when I did my degree and my master's, I was a lot younger. You know, traditional kind of college, university. Loved the degree and wanting to stay at the university, and I really enjoyed the psychology. So I stayed and did a full-time master's, and it was great. It was brilliant. obviously from that I became a teacher. So, gained my PGC and taught, and that was great. And I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the practical element of teaching more than actually the theoretical side. And really, I think being in industry from, for a good kind of 6-7 years or 8 years, sorry, and then deciding that it would be a really good idea to go back into academia was probably not the best idea. I can say that now because I'm at the kind of back end of it, I guess. But yeah, it was you know what, it was a great opportunity, and it has been a great opportunity. And doing a PhD has opened my eyes up to a lot of things that obviously I've been researching around formal coach education. The difficulties in creating it, the difficulties in aligning it. The FA do a really good job and have a lot of people who are really well intentioned about the changes that have occurred in formal coach education more recently. It's not perfect. There's things that need to be developed and thought about, which over time they will, because in the FA they've got some fantastic people that work there. So I've got no doubt that it will continue to develop and hopefully improve. But yeah, all these letters, all these degrees, I'll be honest and say that I did them because I wanted to do them and I found them interesting, and I'm the type of character, if I enjoy doing something, I'll do it. If I don't enjoy something, I won't do it.
Well, you must enjoy a range of things, because currently sitting at 33 years old, Noel, and you've got that array of academic and sporting qualifications, as we mentioned. Obviously, A licence holder, 2 beautiful children. That's a lot you've packed into life so far. Are you going to slow down at any point, or?
Yeah, hopefully. I'm not sure when. I can't slow down too much because otherwise the missus will kill me. We've just had the new kitchen done, and she wants the garden done now. So it's why I get all these jobs, mate. Just jump in, Martin. She just keeps going. Oh, but we need a new garden, and it's like, yeah, all right, okay, I'll go out and do some more coaching.
I know that feeling.
Yeah. Listen, but there's a lot of us that do it. But no, listen. They're all great listening to them, to be fair. But I think it's indicative of people in our industry that we love what we do, and because of the complexity that now goes into football and coaching and teaching and learning and stuff like that, you've got all these different avenues that people are exploring. And like you say, through your podcast, the people that you've had on so far, and the people that you're liaising with, they've got all these different specialities. They've got all these different modes of getting across their way of why they believe it benefits their coaching and how it can benefit player development. And I'm just part of that system. And I've been very fortunate, really, really lucky that with, to go to a good university that I've enjoyed. And certainly during my time on the PhD, been in contact with some phenomenal academics and fantastic kind of practitioners, both in university and at the FA. And it's just, I just take it more as a really fortunate journey that I've been on so far, and had the access to speak to people and to critique people and have debates and conversations, really, and just extend my own learning. I'm not perfect, and I never will be. So it's just a privilege and a pleasure to be on, just rolling as we all are.
Just getting through life. I mean,
just trying.
I'm always intrigued and engrossed when we chat, certainly at sort of the mentor meetings, and I really come away from our conversations with another way of thinking. Going back to sort of the roles in football, you've had full-time head of academy education at a football club, part-time academy coaching in Sydney. Is there anything you've not done?
Yeah, no. Pro level coaching would be nice, but I think we know the standards of that, and I'm very comfortable in saying that I'm just not there yet. Not nowhere near. There's just the things I got to learn. There's exposures I need to be exposed to, opportunities and stuff like that. But no, again, a lot of that's very, very fortunate. Being fortunate enough to work full time in football as a head of education and support the learning of scholars, and I guess the informal mentoring side of the lads as well has been a real privilege, and I learned a lot in that time. certainly around the dynamics of how a particular club works. Obviously, every club is different. Part-time roles in different clubs. Academy football again. Great learning opportunities. I think it's really important that coaches going into academy football, wanting to go into academy football, understand that you're going to be low down in the pecking order. You got to earn the right to be seen as a coach, and through that it means you've got to develop the people that are in front of you, both on and off the pitch, both the qualities that are expected on the pitch and the qualities that are expected off of it when they're representing the club that they're at. And I think I've come across some fantastic people who have shown that to me, and again in the game had some real role models that are humble. And I think that's where I've been very fortunate, that I've not really had any characters in my kind of world of football where they've just been a bit up themselves, or they've always tended to have a very kind of humble head on themselves, and understood that they've not always succeeded, that failure is part of the learning process, which I've tried to embrace. Certainly in the last 3 years with the PhD, that's been part and parcel academically, but it stems from the football. Sydney was probably one of the best times in terms of my coaching. It was one, I think, when you talk about when did you really know that coaching was for you, it was probably my time in Sydney. Yeah, that was probably when I think I passed my B license at the time. Obviously was working with the club down in London, and obviously decided to do a bit of traveling, and was just very lucky to get a role at Sydney University, as the head coach of the reserve women's game. Never I taught female players, so in the club there was female players in the club, but never taken a female team. And to expose myself to that, I learned a lot about communication, and also being the assistant coach to the first team, where in the first team we had kind of, I think it was between like 4 and 6 international players, young Matildas, and these were girls and ladies who could ping a ball far further than I can, and with far more accuracy. So you had to really step up, and you had to think about how you were going to go about planning. You couldn't just turn up and put on a session. They wouldn't be satisfied with that stuff. So I think my love of planning, which anyone that knows me knows that I love to plan. I love a session plan. I love a bit of detail, and that's where it stemmed. That understanding that I had to come prepared, because my on the field coaching was still kind of coming along. It was still in a process where, not that I wasn't confident, but it's a different realm. And Sydney was great for me, and the decision to come back was based on, right, I want it now. I want a bit of football now. I want to be involved.
There's a couple of things I've picked up on from there. Is you said coaching in Australia was where you went, this is where I want to be. Was there a particular moment, when action within a game, a session, where you went, actually, I'm not bad at this, and I could do more? Or was it just the experience as a whole?
I think it was the first time. So although in my coaching I was working with players and stuff like that, I never worked with a team. So a team in terms of training and match days, it was never mine. I was always part of a coaching team, which was great for me because I had to learn and stuff. But whereas when I went to Sydney, I was the head coach. So although I'd taken grassroots players, girls, boys, males, females, young men, young women, it was always in the context of a coaching team. But when I went out, I was the coach. I was the lead. Everyone was looking at me. And that's when I guess, the development of your playing philosophy, which didn't really come into the B license when we done it. It was very much on-field stuff. So it's very different to what it is now. So you had to really think about it, and I had to develop a playing philosophy quickly. I had to develop, a bit of a philosophy about what this team was going to be about. And I was very fortunate that we done really well. I actually came across a reference last week that the director of football, who I, just so happened, ended up living with him and his wife and stuff like that in their house, because I was originally only meant to be there for like 3 months. And for the first 9 weeks I was employed, I was living in a hostel. So, trekking back and forth and stuff from the hostel to the training and stuff, it was always a good laugh. But yeah, they put me up, and obviously I stayed for the entire season, and I ended up being out there for just over a year. But it was just that whole thing of, okay, system, roles, responsibilities. Who do I need? Who are in the 16s that I can bring up? Who in the first team are going to be available for me to use as part of that? So it was just all that process that I kind of put together, or had to put together, that made me really feel, yeah, do you know what, this is for me. And we did do well. We got through to our first ever grand final. We lost. I was devastated. We lost 86th minute. They scored. We lost 1-0. But overall, we were happy. We had the best defensive record in the league. We went, I think, a 17-game unbeaten streak. And I didn't have any pre-season with them. By the time I was actually doing some agricultural work up in the tablelands, up in kind of northeast Australia, up in Cairns, and by the time I flew down, I had 2 training sessions, and we started our first league game. So the first 6 or 7 games was really, first 6 or 7 weeks was me trying to really implement things quickly, and it didn't always go smoothly. It wasn't wow, what an amazing fairy tale this journey must have been. There was arguments, there was crying, there was discussions, there was debates. There was me dropping players that weren't happy, there was me starting players that didn't feel ready, but all that kind of concoction just made me kind of really want it more. And that's based on what I'd done, and we knew that the first team coach was going to be like retiring, and I was offered the first team role after, and a lot of the girls were keen for me to be in, but I made the decision that I wanted to come back, because football, soccer out there, which I can't stand the term, bless them, but it is what it is, wasn't as prevalent as obviously it is here. So decision to come back was a conscious one based on career. So yeah.
Picking up on that and a bit from the other conversation, you mentioned failing and embracing. Now,
yep.
Luke, we've had many conversations where I've picked up the phone and had a bit of a rant because I've not had that interview or not had any contact at all. But you mentioned there, obviously, part of the PhD and having those tough conversations with players. Failing is actually part of winning, would you say?
100%. 100%. And I think it's important to distinguish winning from success. So, the age-old kind of coach, UCLA coach of John Wooden, very prevalent, asks you to kind of distinguish what success looks like to you in your context. So, winning is the outcome. That's the result. That's you getting the 3 points, or that's you getting to the next round, or winning a trophy, or whatever it may be. But success is very different. Success is what you're able to contextualize and what you're able to put down as a marker, as a benchmark. And although the success might not be winning the league, it might be that the development of the player's social skills is your overall I guess outcome for success of a season. That's what you judge it on, and that's for me the intention when I went to Sydney, for example. When I really had to think about it, was never to go and win the league. I didn't know the league. I didn't know the teams. I didn't know the players. I didn't know the stand. Didn't know anything. And all I wanted really was to have a cohesive group that ultimately, from a playing perspective, just wouldn't concede goals. So we worked on defensive shape. We worked on organisation. And it transpired that we had the best defensive record in the league. Now, that's success for me. The kind of, I guess, the benefits or the subsequent things of that, of getting through to a grand final, just occurred because of that. And the kind of relationships that I built within the squad, and again, not all of them. I didn't get on with everybody, and not everybody got on with me. As my missus always reminds me, I am very much like Marmite, so it is what it is in that sense, and I'm comfortable with that. And you have to become comfortable. So I think it's just determining what success looks like, and what success looks like for you in your context as a coach, what it looks like for the players, depending on age groups and stuff. Do the players kind of have a bit of an idea of what success looks like for them? And if success is winning the league, okay, how realistic is it? What is it that they think that we have to do as a collective, or what do they have to do as individuals? So you're able to tease out kind of this aspect of success, and knowing that failure along the way is only going to support that process. And people have to be comfortable with that. you know, and it's difficult for certainly younger children to experience failure because nobody likes it. You know, to say we like failure, we'd be lying. But to embrace it and to make it part of, you know, a reflective process and a reflexive process to build on and to further develop kind of what we do is essential. You know, we're not the final end product, and we never will be.
Just out of interest, when you went in as head coach, were you given targets that were aligned to the club's success, or was it a case of, you know, go in, do the best that you can, see what comes from it?
Yeah, so the director, who is he's a close friend, and I think of him as family now. We had a great relationship, and he just said, look, this is where they've kind of finished in the league in the kind of previous 2 or 3 seasons. We feel that we've got quite a decent young crop of girls coming through from the 16s. You know, can you look to maybe integrate some of them and go and push on and see where, you know, if you can get higher than before, which, you know, we did. We tried to do, but I don't think it was ever, you know, John never put any pressure on me in terms of you must hit this target. You know, that's not what it was. That's not what the relationship was. It was, you know, you'd wake up in the morning or you'd be having breakfast together and you'd be like, so, you know, game day. You know, I remember a game we drew 0-0, and I decided to change the system. I went from a 4-3-3 to a 4-4-2 diamond, and we didn't work on it in training. I just felt that for what we were doing, it just might have worked. Yeah, and I was trying to accommodate certain players, and they didn't come off, and we didn't score a goal. We didn't concede, but we drew 0-0. And he said, "What was your thought process?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm not sure." And we had to really dive into it, and that was a point of failure where really it was a game that we probably should have won. It was a game that we needed to win in order to kind of keep up with the pack, and we dropped 2 points. And you kind of have to sit down and go, right, why did I do that? So instead of me reverting systems to accommodate, I just had to say, you know what, I'm going to have a conversation with a player and ask, is she comfortable playing either out wide or she's going to be on the bench? Mm-hmm. And in the end, having the conversation was better for the team than it was kind of trying to mold a system around her. Yeah. So yeah, it was more that relationship where it was just kind of the probing, and he was great. You know, he's a very experienced coach, you know, in himself. He's actually, you know, a Scottish fella, kind of went over from Australia, and he knows the game, and he just teased that stuff out a little bit, which again just got me reflecting and got me thinking. Really,
I really like the honesty there of, I don't know if it was a backhanded sort of insult or whatever it may have been, of drawing a game 0-0, of what were you thinking? And you were quite honest and said, don't really know. Can we be guilty as coaches of maybe doing things on impulse because it's seen as, you know, savvy to make impulsive decisions without thinking?
Yeah, listen, you've always got to adapt to different elements of the game in different moments, whether it be, you know, in a training session before game or, you know, in the lead up, depending on obviously how many times you train, or it might be on game day that a player calls up sick and, you know, they might be your deep line 4 in a 3 and you're like, right, okay, I don't really have someone who I feel can suit it. You know what? We're going to have to play two players down. We're going to have to play with 2 6s realistically, or whatever, or 2 8s, or whatever people want to call it. So you adapt that as and when you was. I just think that, and listen, I think honesty is a really important thing in coaching anyway. So, and you know, the point that you made, you have to be honest with yourself. You can, you know, give it all the spiel to everybody else, but you've got to be able to look yourself in the mirror. You've got to be able to look yourself, you know, on webcam, record yourself, kind of reflecting if you need to, or writing stuff down. And you need to be okay with saying, you know what, that was my fault. You know, and by the way, I wasn't at the beginning. I used to try and blame everybody else. Everybody. It weren't my fault. It was the players' fault. They can't do it. I've told them to do it. They can't do it. But over time, you realise what a big impact you have as a coach, either positively or negatively. And, you know, I think we just need to try our best to do that. And I think the key point in that scenario is I just wasn't thinking. I just wasn't being reflective. And I just went on, I guess, inexperience and naivety to say, I've played Football Manager. I've changed systems. It'll work. Do you know what I mean? And that's the brutal honesty, I think, in terms of me looking back on it. It's probably what it was. It was just naivety and a lack of an ability to sit back and really reflect and say, actually, do you know what? I probably just need to have a conversation with a player.
This is slightly going off track, but
yeah,
I'm just referring to an incident I was involved in on a level 1 course about 12 months ago is that, do you think with the access to high level information, a range of coaches, and I'm not trying to go away with this in terms of a level 1 coach, because we've all been level 1 coaches and really keen and, you know, excited to get on the grass and help others. But, you know, I was speaking with an under 7s coach, talking about high pressing and, you know, gang pressing. And I was like, do you understand it? How are you going to pass that message to your 7s? So do you think, for all the good access that we've got, do you think it can be negative at times if you don't understand it yourself and then therefore fit it to your players?
Yeah, so I put a tweet out a couple of weeks ago, I think. You know, obviously we're in the midst of a lockdown and, you know, all these kind of online kind of webinars and support networks and podcasts and stuff. And they're great. And listen, they are great because what they're providing is information. Mm-hmm. But what we often get confused with is that we assume that information equals to knowledge, and it just doesn't. Mm-hmm. And what we have to do is we have to go through a filtering system in our head of deciding what it is that's relevant for us in this moment and what's relevant, more importantly, for our players that we could use to help them get better. Now, listen, the people that put on, you know, all these analysis and stuff, it's phenomenal. It's brilliant. But if you're getting grassroots coaches, and, you know, listen, I still look at and watch and go and watch grassroots coaches, certainly from a mentoring perspective, and watch what they try and do. And there's some wonderful stuff that goes on, some brilliant stuff. So it is opening coaches' eyes to being aware of certain things. But in certain contexts, it's just not relevant. They just don't need X, Y, and Z. You know, at that time, they need something that's tangible for that level of player, not necessarily for the coach, because, you know, I understand what you're saying. A level 1 coach doesn't make a level 1 person. You know what I mean? I've seen and worked with some phenomenal level 1 coaches, phenomenal people who I would happily work alongside because of the other skills that they have. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we take more and more we're more and more aware, now, that people coming on these courses, some of these are architects, they're lawyers, they're teachers, they're engineers. Some of these people have other qualities that they're working 50, 60-hour weeks and they're able to organize themselves and families. These are qualities that just tie in wonderfully to coaching that hopefully now we make people more aware of, and it's not just purely about the game. And really the game stuff, yes, it will come from information, but it will come from learning, doing it yourself. It will come from, you know, sitting with other people. It will come with standing next to other people and coaching. So I just think that information for me is never a bad thing. It's just that, are you aware that you need to go through a filtering system of what you deem to be relevant at a particular time? And it's not to say that you can't revisit something in 6 months' time or a year's time and go, do you know what? As my age groups have gone up, so we've changed formats from 9s to 11s, or we've changed from 7s to 9s. And do you know what? I think I could probably put a bit of a new spin on it. And I remember reading this article, or I remember watching this webinar, and do you know what? I might try and begin to apply it. But for me, knowledge is only knowledge once you're able to apply it. And that's, you know, we work in a realm where our application is on the field. You know, so all the thought processes, all the cognitions that go on in our head can be fantastic. But if we're unable to kind of translate that into meaningful application for our players, it's just wasted information for me, in my opinion. I could be wrong, but that's how I see it. And that's the difficulty at the moment, that because we are exposed to so much, that we often forget to just maybe take stock a little bit, recognize where we are, where we maybe want to be, or where we may need to be at times.
Sort of going on from that, and again, this is just my opinion per se, is that having done the level 1 and level 2 through the old sort of course layout, and now seeing the coaches coming through, or the people coming through on level 1 to become coaches, it's not again, my opinion, it's no longer the old school typical lads and dads. You're now getting people who are coming through and being coaches, not just a parent. And I think the way that the courses have been structured has really helped ignite curiosity, and people, you know, you've probably seen it more as a tutor, but I'm seeing mums, dads who just want to keep a team for their children coming on with so much enthusiasm to to make not only their child, but other people's children better.
Mm-hmm.
That can only be a positive thing for the game, can it not?
100%, and that's one of the the big pluses of these kind of new courses that have come out. That exactly that it's ignited an element of curiosity, and that curiosity is fueling enthusiasm to go and learn a little bit more and go and learn outside the sphere of formal coach education. And I think what's really important to understand is that formal coach education is just a really, really small part of any coach's overall development. We and listen, I do get it to a degree, and I was certainly the same when I first started, that we see formal coach education because we get the certificate and we can call ourselves level 1 coaches, 2 coaches, B license, A license, pro license, wherever the level is, and it carries a level of esteem, certainly with the English FA, because of I guess how we're viewed across the world, and that's great, but the thing that I keep saying is that a certificate will get you an interview for a role, whether that be with voluntary coaching at a charter standard grassroots club, or whether it's an academy, or whether it's for a full-time first team manager's position. But the quality of your coaching will keep you there. And what the formal coach education system allows for is that accreditation, and I guess that trusting that you've hit that level at that particular time. Now, what coaches have to be aware of is that we're more than capable of just rolling back into our old selves. We've all done it. We've all gone, do you know what? Oh, tonight I'm tired. Do you know what? I'm just going to put a safe session on. I know how to do it. I know all the details off the top of my head. I'm just going to roll it out. And sometimes coaches can get into a habit of just continuously doing that. And that's not coach development. So although you may have a level 2 or you have a B license or whatever level you have, because you've shown that you can do it, it doesn't mean that you're going to do it consistently. And I think what these courses are doing are providing that constant ignition to go and want to do something new, or go and look at another area of coaching. And obviously certainly more prevalent in the last kind of 5-10 years has been more of the psychological and social elements of player development. I'd like to think that we're not getting overawed by it, and we're not forgetting about the game, because the game is important, and that brings physical demands as well as technical and tactical demands, on top of the psych and social. But again, it's all relative to context, and I think that's the most important thing, that when we're working with coaches and when we're working with players, we have to understand who they are, we have to understand their environment, we have to understand the context and what they believe success looks like. And that's where it comes in. And listen, these courses have done that. The courses have done that. They've ignited that curiosity to go away and learn new things, which, as you said, is only a positive.
Bit of a tough question, really.
Oh no.
And I must state that it is our opinions only, not those of our employers. England DNA, how much of an impact has it had?
In the grassroots game?
Yes.
Loads. It's had a massive impact. You've only got to look at the work of Pete Sturgis with Foundation DNA, and more recently Graham Carrick with the Youth Development DNA, that's kind of being rolled out and roadshowed and stuff like that. And listen, it's great for me in a certain context, and what it's providing is new forms of information that's relevant to our context, right? And again, what we can't get too giddy about is, remember, it's information. You've got to go away. You've got to filter it. You've then got to see how it applies to your context. And that's where you've got to go through this process of planning a bit, go and delivering, go away and reflect on it, what worked, what didn't work. Because, some of the practices that Pete puts on are fantastic, but they might not work for your group of players. They might just be a completely different set of personalities. And the way in which someone like Pete Sturgis works, his personality is able to get X, Y, and Z out of the players, whereas your personality might be very different. So, the England DNA provides an overview and some pointers of how you could coach. It's not the only way. It's just a way. And I think we have to be very kind of conscious of that it's neither good nor bad. I think the only time where it can be dangerous is that people start talking about it as if it's the only way. And that's the, and whether that be coming from tutors, whether that come from mentors, or whether that come from coaches, I do it this way because the FA say, and you're like, okay, I understand that, but have you been exposed to other ways? Have you tried other ways? Please don't get bogged down that because a national governing body says it's true or it's good, that it must be good. It's what's relevant to you. And again, we both work for the FA, and I've had plenty of conversations around the England DNA. Some of the coaching fundamental stuff that obviously we've been exposed to, simply in my opinion, don't apply to the context of the grassroots game. Some of them absolutely do.
The thing for me on the DNA is again, it invokes that sort of curiosity within coaches of who are you, how do you play, how do you coach, and for me that asks a question for a coach to think about those strands. For me,
100%. And listen, those five pillars around kind of who you are, how you play, how you coach, how you support, the future player. It's all within context, and if it generates thought process, great. But as I said earlier, we just need to be conscious that the thought processes are great. How do you go and apply it? How do you go and put measures in? How do you go and practice? How do you go and put into practice what it is that you're thinking about? Because there's a massive difference between thinking about a plan and actually executing it. And I'm massively privy to that. I think of some of the most wonderful sessions in my head, but then when I get it down on paper and do it in practice, it's terrible. Do you know what I mean? You look and you go, no, it worked in my head. You need to be doing it how I thought about it in my head. What's wrong with you? But then you got to go in, you got to reflect, and that's where we just need to be not careful. We just need to be aware. Just need to be aware of the amount of information, the exposure to England DNA. And listen, we talk about it because obviously we're employed with it, but there's other ways. There's other ways. The DNA is a way, and it's a really good, solid way to introduce coaches to different things to think about. But there's other stuff out there, and you've just got to be, take the time to really not go at 100 miles an hour, not think that your coaching practice is going to develop massively in 3 months. It's baby stepping fundamentals that are going to allow you to make long-term changes into coaching practice, because long-term development from coach's perspective is only likely to result in long-term player development and long-term person development.
I think I could talk all day with Noel, and I think based on the DNA, that's going to be another chat that we have at a different time. I think we're going to have that recorded when we discuss that. But one thing I wanted to sneak in, obviously you've had a busy career to date. You've also published a book called Youth Soccer Development, Progressive Player to Improve the Person. When did that come about? How did you fit it in? And the inspiration behind it?
Yeah, well, it was before the kid. It was before the kids turned up, so I had a little bit of time, so it was all right. I only had the 3 jobs at the time, and the missus, no kids, so loads of time. No, the book came out of, it was during my time when I was head of academy education, and also I've been a teacher for a number of years at that point. I was coaching as well, and I was just kind of going through day after day, teaching and trying to support the lads, in their life, their wider life, as much as on the field, because, within my full-time role, that wasn't my responsibility. And it just got me thinking really around, what if these players don't get in? And listen, we know the stats about, those that make it and those that don't and stuff like that. So that doesn't need to be kind of regurgitated, but my head and I guess my coaching kind of premise and what I believe to be true for me is that, good people make good players. Good. And I'm not saying that you have to be perfect. You don't have to be angels, but you do have to have something about you as a human being if you want to make it in the game, whether that be, different levels of motivation or desire and stuff. And I guess, very prevalent that, I guess that we've all watched is The Last Dance with Michael Jordan. And I guess that's a testament to the motivation and the desire and the belief, and that doesn't stem from him as a basketball player. That stems from him as a human being. So, I mean, I wrote this, 5 years ago. Well, no, 6 years ago I wrote it, and it got published, back in 2015, I think. And I guess I the honest answer is I wrote it just to see if I could. I had ideas in my head that I wanted to get on paper, and when I kind of ended up putting it on paper, I ended up dividing it into some chapters that I thought might work. And I just sent it to a publisher one day, and they said, look, it's a great idea. Let's build some chapters. Let's build some more chapters. Let's make it kind of accessible to these readers. And, extremely fortunate to to have it published and for it to be on Amazon or whatever it's on and stuff, and then it's brilliant. But there was no incentive to go out and say, oh, I'm going to write a book and it's going to be a bestseller, and that was never the intention. It was, I think, when we talk about developing coaching philosophies and we talk about understanding who we are, I think that book is at the time who I was. And don't get me wrong, there's some chapters in there that I probably wouldn't write again. There's some chapters in there that are probably just whinging, and they're naive chapters. Certainly at the beginning, I think I spoke a lot about the FA before I worked for them, and it was a naive chapter to write. But other stuff later in the book around certainly developing people, and I use the example of something that I tried during my time at Sydney, and I try to do in different formats now. So it was just a wonderful experience to write it, but it was never written to, be a Dan Brown style book. Do you know what I mean? It was just, could I do it? Let's give it a whirl. Let's see if people want to read it. And fortunately, some people have read it, and some people contacted me and we spoke about it. Some people from professional clubs, phoned me up and we had conversations about it. And I guess it came at a time where, although this was prevalent around developing people, it probably came at the right time, 5-6 years ago, where it started really kind of kicking in about this holistic development. Although, previous clubs would have done it for years and years and years, and industry, and certainly in academia, it's been something that's been spoken about for decades. So, yeah, it was just my I guess a reflective or an experiential piece, really.
Any scope for more to be published, or is that firmly?
At the moment, so within the PhD, there's a couple of papers that I'm writing from an academic perspective, so with an academic audience in mind, in terms of the research. So that's certainly taking precedence at the moment. Yeah, maybe in time. I'm conscious though that, like I said, I never wanted to write a book for the sake of writing it. I wanted to see if I could write it. I wanted to get my thoughts down that I thought were important to me at the time, and maybe important to other people. I'm conscious at the moment that there's a lot of books out there, a lot of people in similar positions to myself, and obviously you as well. Is we've all got something to say, and a lot of people are thinking and feeling that look, let me write a book about it and stuff, and that's fine, and that's I would encourage anyone to give it a go. Writing is a great skill to have. I'm not very good at it academically, by the way, but in terms of writing, the book and stuff, it was a great learning process. So certainly encourage it. But yeah, I'm just a bit conscious of if there was something meaningful that I thought, what I could build upon. Yeah, definitely. But I it's not something that I would force at the moment.
Going back to the coaching then, is there a level that you enjoy more than others? The academy work you've done, female game, grassroots, semi-pro?
Honestly, do you know what? I love it all. I love it all. Football's football for me, and my biggest thing is I love the game, but I love developing people. Mm-hmm. And wherever that setting is, I'll go to it. So, making a conscious decision when asked to come in and maybe do a little bit of City with the Selects program. So obviously it sits under the academy. It's not the academy. It's effectively their kind of understudy. It's their kind of core development center. And when they asked kind of what age group, I asked if I could have a young age group, could I, because for the previous 6 or 7 years, I'd been older age groups. I'd been kind of 15s, 16s, 18s, 21s. And I wanted to go back to I guess where I started, and working with these kids, and just seeing the life in them, seeing this love and passion for the game again. Whereas I felt for certainly the back end that coaching got a bit serious, and I get that it is to a certain level and a certain degree, but those nines have it kind of almost showed me the love of the game again, which has been lovely. And to be fair, I get a similar sense when I go out and I observe coaching sessions in grassroots football, either as a mentor or when I'm doing in situ visits and stuff like that. I just feel it. I get a real kind of emotive kind of, I guess, flow going through me where I go, do you know what? I love this. And I don't care if it's on a mud patch, and I don't care if it's on concrete, and I don't care if the kids can't kick a football to save their lives. It's just being in it. So I guess I'm lucky in that sense that I just love everything about it.
No, that's brilliant. I mean, one of the sort of final questions before we go on to our, I'm not going to say famous, I'll say, quick fire question round, but
Yeah.
your experience as a teacher and coach developer, does that influence the way that you coach now? Are you very conscious of how you coach?
Yes, in the most part. Don't get me wrong, I still get caught up in the moment. I still get caught up in it now. You know, if something great happens, I'm cheering like a fan. If something goes wrong in a particular moment, you know, I'll go off. I'll be like, what's going on here? What's going on? Why did that happen? Yeah. So I still get it. But yeah, I'd like to think that, you know, my coaching process over the years has developed, and that stemmed from, you know, an understanding maybe of pedagogy and you know, more recently within, I guess, kind of tutoring with, you know, 16 plus so adult learners, andragogy. And again, it's not something that I'm perfect at, but I very much value the process of coaching now, and really try and take my time with stuff. So yeah, I think across the kind of disciplines of teaching, of coaching, and of learning myself, of being a learner, you know, I've spent the last 3 years, well, I'm always learning, but certainly in the last 3 years, really being probably, you know, the novice learner in a field of academic research that just, you know, most of it flies over my head.
Yeah.
So to sit there and feel the feelings that I feel, I try and take that in what players might try and be feeling, maybe what learners are feeling on courses, what coaches might be feeling when I first meet them. So, you know, I try my best to kind of, you know, build the relationships and build trust and build that little bit of, you know, fun amongst us and fun amongst the players at the same time as trying to get that, you know, the most development out of them. So yeah, it's tied in over the years. It's been a number of years now.
So the future, then, you're coming to the end of your PhD.
Yeah.
Obviously a little bit more time to get on with that PhD at the minute, in between obviously homeschooling. What does the future hold for you then, Noel? What is there any aspirations, or just see what happens?
No, do you know what? I said this to a few people, that I'm a bit like a magpie at the moment, that, and I've always been like that. If I enjoy something, I'll go after it. And if there's opportunity within that sphere to do something, I'll go and do it. And if I love it, I'll be in it for 10 years. If I don't love it, and it's not something that I see, or if it's not something that I feel that I can give my all to, you know, I do my best to kind of step aside. And you know, opportunities are quite, you know, rare in football. And if I don't believe that I'm not either the right person for the job, or if I don't believe that I can give my all, then somebody else is more deserving of those roles and of those things. So for me at the moment, it's very much consolidation. You know, that, you know, we're both, I guess, fortunate and unfortunate in this time, but you know, I have, you know, a couple of roles at the FA, you know, part time, and you know, I have a role at City, and you know what it looks like from an academic perspective. Who knows? You know, I'd love to go in and do some teaching in HE, and you know, pit myself up against the students and other kind of academics and other kind of practitioners, and go from there. But I'll be honest, I don't really stress too much about it. I just kind of like a bit of a dog with a bone, really. Once I've got it, I get all giddy, and I don't really think about what happens after. So yeah, that's my honest answer, mate. I don't know.
Fair enough, mate. But I'm pretty sure that, you know, from those who've listened to the chat, and I know you well enough, you'll be a success in whatever you do. Last sort of in-depth question that I'm going to ask before we go to our not very quick fire round. If you could go back and speak to a young Noel Dempsey, or any young coaches listening to this, what advice would you give? Looking to forge a career in the football world, what would you?
So the first one would certainly be know the difference between badge collecting and learning. You know, I was that person. 100%. You know, I'll get my 2. I need to get my B, because you know, if I get my B, I'm going to work in Premier League in 6 months. I'm going to be smashing it. You know, you have that naivety to it, and I think the more you can be aware early on that learning takes place far more away from these accreditation courses, and to go and embed yourself in an environment that you feel that you can really learn from and offer as well. You know, the biggest thing that I, you know, got taught, I guess, more from a personal background, was if you're wanting something, make sure that you're able to offer something as well. So, you know, even if it's the case of, look, can you offer me some knowledge and some insight and some support? And what I'll offer you is me picking up the cones, me grabbing the footballs that got kicked in the hedge. You know, I'll do the warm up if you want, and just kind of building it from there. And I think that it kind of ties that in really to going and being prepared to go and get on the grass, or the Astro, go and get on it, go and put on a session. Don't be afraid to fail on it. As long as you've got the best intentions for the kids or the players that you're working with at heart, you're always going to be okay. It's only when you really, and we see these coaches, when their own self-interest outweighs the interest of the players, that's a problem. And I get that everybody in coaching wants to be at the top level, and I get that, well, most, not all, but and the player and the coaches want to develop and they want to progress and they want to be at this club or this club. Just please don't do it at the expense of the people that are in front of you, or the people that are around you. Because bridges are very easily burnt in the game, and I'll be honest as well. There's a few bridges that I've burnt along the way, and I massively regret those. And sometimes you've got to either phone up, or if you see them, you've got to apologize. You've got to put your hand out and say, listen, I apologize for that, because I've done it 100%. So I think just being aware that go and do the courses, they're great, but go and learn, go and learn the game, go and learn what it's like to be on the grass in different contexts. The stuff that I do now as a player, I took from what I did within the women's game, and although that time in it was just over a year, really, it was phenomenal. And the stuff that I learned, I applied to kids football, to young players football, to adults football, and it's just adapting. So yeah, that's probably the key one. And I think during that time, you develop an understanding of who you are, and I think understanding who you are as a person is probably the most important aspect. Knowing what you're about as a human being. Because, and I guess we talk about it as a coaching philosophy, understanding your beliefs, understanding your values. Well, what are your values and what are your beliefs as a human being? What do you honestly practice and preach every day? And if you do those stuff, you'll naturally take them into your coaching. If you try and, put forth some really superficial and generic beliefs and values that you try and, I guess, act out, people will see right through you. And I think it's better to be yourself and be the best version of yourself rather than kind of tell a lie to people, or tell a lie to yourself, even worse, tell a lie to yourself and, not be you. So, yeah, I think that will kind of be my advice, long-winded as it may be.
No, it really hits a tone, because towards the end, the answer there is, there was a gent who was on our Talent ID level 2, who I stayed in touch with, had a chat with him. It just became really informal, and he asked me a question, and it made me feel really, really uncomfortable, because it's the first time I've ever been asked it, was what are my key beliefs that I bring to every session?
Yep.
And you know what? I couldn't answer it. And it's taken a lot of thinking to understand what they are.
Yep.
And what, honestly, do I bring to every training session? Because I don't bring the love to the game. As we mentioned, before this chat, I don't bring the love to the game to every session, because, other work sometimes dictates that, experiences at home, whatever it might be. As you mentioned, you just, all right, get the session on, let's facilitate. But that's not fair. And, it's not fair to the players. So what do I bring to every session? And it made me feel uncomfortable. And I'd say for the first time in a long time, I was in a situation where I thought, wow, I don't know who I am.
Yep.
In terms of that. And it was great. And, anybody out there who's listening, I challenge you to get that down on paper. Who are you and what do you bring to every session?
Yep.
Look, quick fire question round. I don't think it's going to be quick fire, but we'll have a go. Best experience in football to date?
They're all great experiences. Probably as a bubble of time, probably the Sydney stuff, because it just kick-started everything that I wanted to kind of be and everything that I wanted to do.
Okay. Best friend in football?
Best friend in football? Oof. Probably in Manchester, probably, the people that I liaise with the most and who have turned into some really great friends. First would be probably Jay Brownell, who's the under-23s manager at Cheadle, where I kind of, supported the club a little bit. And, originally met him during our time at Radcliffe when he took the under-21s. And he's a great person, great human being, good manager. So certainly him, and probably, you know, Will Griffiths, who actually started off through the mentoring program as a coach that I went and kind of watched and observed. And after a while, it was kind of, you know what, I'm not mentoring you anymore. We're just mates, really, aren't we? And we speak at least 3-4 times a week, every week. And he just challenges me on certain questions, or I challenge him, and it's turned into a really great friendship where, you know, I trust him, and he's a good coach, and he was on, you know, the first B license that I delivered as well, and you know, he's a really, really good person as well. So probably those two.
Great
Yeah.
Toughest opponent that can be either as a player or a coach?
Well, as a player, I didn't really come across many because I wasn't very good. But I think coaching, I think during my time when I was, you know, coaching at Burnley, you know, we played, you know, the likes of Liverpool and Man United, and they were always like our cup finals. You know, they were our cup finals. We go there and we'd shut down shop and listen, we're going to nick it here, we're going to nick one. And yeah, probably those two. I have to say as well that one of them we actually beat Liverpool. And that was like one of my proudest moments as part of a coaching team. You're like, get in, you know. So yeah, probably those as a coach.
Brilliant. Best player you've coached?
Oh. In terms of ability?
It can be ability. I'd say all-round package.
Right. Okay, so probably there's probably a couple, to be fair. So Danny Adzed, who I had as a youngster at Rochdale, who's, you know, obviously played for Rochdale's first team, now signed at Norwich. He was phenomenal. You know, at 12, he was different class. I'll be honest, I don't even think I had to coach Danny. I just think I had to tell him, don't kill anyone on the pitch. He was that good. I guess older age groups during my time at Burnley, you know, very privileged to spend time and support and coach kind of Dwight McNeil a little bit, but again, was a phenomenal player anyway. He just needed a kick up the backside every now and then in terms of tracking back. But, you know, he certainly added that to his game now, you know, fair play to him. And he was brilliant. And I guess in the same cohort as that, probably Callum Styles, who's, I believe, currently at Barnsley. Technically, probably one of the best players I've seen. He's phenomenal, and a lovely kid. To be fair, all three of them were great kind of young men. I'm very privileged to kind of play a tiny snippet in their journey.
Good. Biggest role model or influence in football?
There's not one. There's multiple. I think from a London standpoint, you know, I don't go beyond Danny Bailey and Trevor Bailey, and even their other brother Gary Bailey. You know, just from a supporting network point of view, in terms of understanding the game early on as a coach and understanding kind of my own beliefs and values as a person, they were instrumental. Since being in Manchester over the last 8 years, you know, Jack Traynor has been a massive influence on me. First met him at Bolton Wanderers when I came in, and you know, we've been kind of good friends and colleagues since. And he's a very humble man. You know, so much experience as a coach developer, and as a coach as well, both within the pro game and obviously now within kind of formal coach education. So certainly him. Similar vein in probably Mark Edwards, who again I met at Bolton, and he actually took me to Burnley as a coach, and he had a big influence on me and a different personality, but you know, loved the game, cared for you, wanted the best for you. So from him, and then probably in the same kind of breath, Keith Mayer, who at the moment is kind of doing the rounds. You know, he's recently published a book with his son David, and both of them are wonderful human beings, phenomenal coaches and coach developers and kind of thinkers of the game and of kind of development as a person as well. So, you know, me and Keith share or have shared many a kind of morning breakfasts together and teas and conversations, and you know, sitting and speaking to Keith it's like going into a vortex, and you come out of the vortex and you're like, wow, where have I been? Where have I been? What happened? What did he say? And it takes you like 4 days to kind of think about it. But he's certainly one who, you know, has taken the time to get to know me and has offered some great insight. So again, I'm extremely fortunate. I'm so fortunate with the people that are around me to influence and stuff like that. And listen, on the flip side, all the coach developers, that I liaise with, and mentors who I liaise with, like yourself, I'm very fortunate to have that network of people that we can call upon. So yeah.
Describe yourself in 3 words.
Oh, fuck. 3 words.
What are you getting?
Honest, passionate, Marmite.
Like it. Final question from me tonight, Noel, because and I'm sure we could chat for days, but is there anyone you would recommend or like to hear on the podcast?
Oh, any of the names above, that I said, Jack Traynor, phenomenal man, phenomenal experience, both as an ex-professional player, playing abroad, full-time, working in football in an academy setting and stuff like that. So Jack would be great. Currently, but he's at UCFB as a coach developer, so at the university, at the Etihad campus. Mark Edwards, who's a kind of specialist coach at Burnley now. Phenomenal experience, as well as Keith. And Keith at the moment, I know is doing, created his own podcast thing, but Keith is very, very, wonderful with his time, very kind of accommodating, and his knowledge base is phenomenal. So any of those 3, in and around the kind of northwest area would provide you with some phenomenal insight, far more than me just waffling.
Don't be daft. Just real good stuff come out of today. Look, no, again, mate, I think you could probably get yourself an early night tonight in terms of all the stuff you've been doing recently. But Luke, massive thank you, mate, for taking up time out of your schedule to have a chat with me. Welcome, I don't think we do it enough, if I'm honest. No. But it's been an absolute pleasure today, mate. Obviously, stay safe during the rest of the lockdown. I hope you and the family stay well, and I look forward to catching up with you soon, mate.
You too, mate, and to everyone listening, hopefully, stay safe, chill out, consolidate, reflect, and we'll be all right. We'll be all right in the long run. I appreciate it as well, Martin, taking your time and putting this on for people. It's a great thing. So thank you as well. Thank you. Well done.
It's my absolute pleasure, mate. Thank you very much.
Top man.
Speak soon, pal.
Take care. Bye.
Ductig brand is on hand for all of your coaching needs. Whether it be to plan sessions or take notes whilst observing games, Ductig are able to cover all of your needs. Use the discount code Irvine20 at checkout to receive a discount. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the content that we're trying to bring to you. Don't forget, new episodes will be released every Monday. You can find us on the iTunes Store, Spotify, and if you want to see the video, you can see it on our YouTube channel, PCT Football Coaching.